Hey everyone, it's the Koopa Man, and welcome to a series of videos I'd like to call Koopa's Favorite Things. Now before we begin, I want to give credit to a YouTuber by the name of Micah Curtis for this idea, as I'm basing this off his Things I Love series he used to do. Felt appropriate to credit the person I am taking the idea from, and regardless of any history or drama there ever was between us, and if you're watching this, Micah, I hope you can get some entertainment out of it too, knowing that you at least helped someone else make a few more positive videos on this cesspit of a site. Anyway, an introduction to today's topic. It all started with a man, a dream, and a colorist who was tired of filling in every patch of Spider-Man's web motif costume. Well, you would think that was the case, but it's a little more complicated than that. You see, it all started with a fan named Randy Schueller, who at some point, probably at a convention, showed the Spider-Man artist one of his fan designs for the suit. The then editor-in-chief of Marvel at the time, Jim Shooter, saw the suit and loved it, and paid Randy to use the design. This would save the company money as it would mean less color ink used, but it would also be easier on the penciler. The original concept Randy had was that Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, part of the Fantastic Four and the smartest man on the planet, would have designed Spidey a new suit made of unstable particles. Shooter, however, mentioned he had a better idea in mind. Then, in Marvel's big event, Secret Wars, they'd introduced a new costume, a mysterious black suit that Peter finds on Battleworld. And after then, it'd appear in the mainline comics starting with Amazing Spider-Man number 252 on April 1st, 1984. This would replace Spider-Man's traditional red and blue costume for the following few issues. And over time, there will be a plot arc of its mysterious nature, seeming to be averse to high sonic frequencies and fires. What should be stated though is it did not affect his mood or mental or emotional well-being. That would be something that was retconned into the lore sometime towards the tail end of the 90s. Spider-Man would keep this suit until issue 258 later that same year, wherein Spider-Man would have a weird dream where he'd be fighting crime in his sleep. He would find out that the suit itself was actually controlling his body while he slept to fight crime. He would take it to Reed Richards to find out once and for all what it was. It would be discovered that the suit itself was very much alive, and it was an alien symbiote that had bonded to Peter in the form of his suit. Due to the shocking discovery, the fact that they knew it was, against his consent, controlling Peter's actions, and they did not understand what this creature was and what its motives were, they decided the best course of action would be to get rid of it. So Spider-Man would fight to remove the suit at the top of Cathedral as the church bell rang, which sonic vibrations weakened the suit enough to free Peter, and afterwards, he'd don a suit even more iconic and become the Bombastic Bag Man. This would not be the end of the design, however. Peter would admit that he did like the color scheme, and so did quite a few fans reading. So he would make a new version of the black suit made of non-symbiotic suit-like materials, and he would wear this design on and off for the next few years. It would be what he would wear in the second publication, Web of Spider-Man, as well as during most of the Hobgoblin arc, the Gang War arc, the introduction of Silver Sable, and Kraven's Last Hunt. It even made appearances in Secret Wars 2. Peter would even be married to Mary Jane Watson before he would stop wearing this suit. However, that would not be the last we see of the alien symbiote. You see, it never stayed dead. While Peter Parker was using a cloth-based black suit, the alien suit was having an arc of its own. First being seen in the Fantastic Four's captivity in the Baxter Building in the pages of that series, before it was freed by a robot. We also see a flashback to that fateful night at the Church Bell Tower from the symbiote's perspective in the Web of Spider-Man, where we see the symbiote save Peter's life before sacrificing itself. But since then, there was a figure always in the background, a figure the spider sense couldn't detect. We would meet this figure at the end of Spider-Man 299, and then fully in issue number 300. They are Venom.
Thought it was over, didn't you, Spider-Man? You made a fool of Eddie Brock whenever you could. You cost me my job, my reputation, my health, my apartment. You just won't stop till you ruin me, will you? You can't do this. I already have. You're fired. I'll get even with you if it's the last thing I do. Rejected the symbiote. Only wanted to make you stronger. Well, surprise, surprise. Now, we're one. Now, you're gonna pay. From now on, we're poison to you, Spider-Man. That's why we call ourselves Venom.
Now to give some context, This issue was written and storyboarded by David Michelinie and inked and penciled by Todd McFarlane. Both men have been credited as the creator of this version of Venom. Now, while it is true that Todd played a major part in the art of Venom, he only agreed to draw the character on one condition. Todd McFarlane had ulterior motives. While fans by and large liked the new black costume, and other artists were fine with it as it made their jobs easier, Todd preferred the old red and blue Spidey he grew up with. So he made it a condition that the character they create scare Peter into using his old costume again. David, who had the idea for this character since the end of the Alien costume arc, agreed, and so he wrote it so that Venom's introduction was him breaking into Peter's apartment to traumatize Mary Jane. Later we would find out this is a little contradictory to Venom's character, but I guess it's explained a little bit better. After Peter makes it back to his apartment from the previous issue's plot, he finds Mary Jane mortified, and they agree to spend the night in a hotel after the experience while Peter ponders what the hell the creature could be. He eventually is confronted by the creature and we get a full backstory. Enter Edward Charles Allen Brock. Eddie Brock never had an easy life. Born to a mother who died giving him life, Eddie's father, resentful, emotionally abused him all his life. All Eddie wanted to do is make Pop proud, and he would go out of his way to try to please him, not understanding why Daddy didn't love him. Now, most of this doesn't get revealed until later on, but bear with me. Eddie was top of his class both academically and athletically, but that was never enough. One night, however, he borrowed his old man's car and ended up driving it drunk, but accidentally ran over his neighbor's son, killing him. Eddie felt an immense guilt about this and was ready to face his punishment when dear old Dad finally stepped in and, well, beat the shit out of Eddie until he pled not guilty and let him cover up the whole affair. His action almost bankrupted Eddie's father, leading to further resentment when it would have been easier had Eddie just did his time like he wanted to. Eddie would move on from this carrying the guilt of his actions, but graduated top of his class from Empire State University and met his sweetheart, Anne Wang, while attending. After reading about the Watergate scandal, he'd switch his major to journalism, and after graduation would take a job at the Daily Globe, a rival to J. Jonah Jameson's Yellow Press, the Daily Bugle. He'd go on to prove himself quite an accredited journalist too, but still wasn't enough for his dad. Then, the fateful day would occur. The police and the media were hot on a trail of a serial killer known as the Sin Eater, a man who would make his victims feel guilty before making them take their own lives. Eddie would get a lead on the identity of the murderer and nab an exclusive that would have him arrested. Only as it turns out, Spider-Man would be on the same night catching the real Sin Eater. Yeah, it turns out the man he got the scoop from was a notorious bell-end wackadoo who just wanted to have himself sent back to the big house. This ruined Eddie's reputation and his credibility. Brock was made a laughingstock, having no ability to get work outside of tabloid newsies and the National Enquirer, and worse yet, Mad Magazine. To make matters worse, this incident will get Brock the Elder to fully disown his son for, and I quote, not taking responsibility for his actions.
What an asshole!
His wife abandoning him, his father disowning him, and his reputation now dirt. Eddie would fall into despair. He would go to Our Lady of Saints Church and pray the Lord for forgiveness, where he was about to commit the most mortal of sins, suicide. Of course, as they say, the Lord works in mysterious ways, because the night he did, wouldn't you know it, it was the very church that Spider-Man freed himself from the alien suit, and the two would bond shortly after, becoming what we know today as the Archfiend Venom. With backstories out of the way, the two would do battle, and well, like most newly introduced villains, Venom would easily gain the upper hand. He would have Peter at his mercy and web him up at the top of Our Lady of Saints Church to be crushed by the bell as he gloats. Why he just doesn't finish him off then and there is beyond me.
Why don't you just kill him?
No, Scott, I have an even better idea. I'm going to place him in an easily escapable situation involving an overly elaborate and exotic death.
Why don't you just shoot him now? I mean, I'll go get a gun. We'll shoot him together. It'll be fun. Bang! Dead. Done.
One more peep out of you and you are grounded, mister, and I am not joking.
So obviously this gives Spider-Man the chance to make an escape and defeat the symbiotic villain. He takes him to the Baxter building where the Thing agrees to keep an eye on him till he can be shipped to the Vault, a specialized prison for superpowered inmates. And that was that, at least for a while. The storyline was so well received, people demanded even more from Venom, and soon. And they would get it in Spider-Man issue 315, where it turns out not even the vault could contain Eddie Brock, and he would be picked up by a family headed to New York City. He'd arrive in the next issue, 316, where he'd begin his hunt for Spider-Man. This would lead him to trading blows with the classy cat burglar, Black Cat. He would, however, be spotted by Mary Jane, who tells Peter that Venom is back and to be on his guard. Peter then hunts down the symbiotic arch-villain, and the two trade blows in a slaughterhouse. But before Venom could finish him off, Peter manages to escape. However, he'd leave behind his street clothes and a change of address form that Eddie finds. He uses this to track down Aunt May in the next issue, Spider-Man 317. But to Peter's shock, all Eddie does is help her with her laundry. The two walk off and he explains. Eddie and Venom's beef is with Peter and Peter alone. He wants no innocents harmed in his vendetta. This is why they aren't currently fighting then and there in the suburbs. This shows Venom has an oversight to him, making him more than a two-dimensional supervillain. But it does bring up the question, though.
Didn't you beat up the Black Cat in the last issue?
Listen, Twerp. She had like 5 outstanding warrants for grand larceny. I said I don't harm innocents.
But my wife.
Never touched her. I didn't say anything about scaring innocents, did I?
The two agree to meet someplace where no innocents can be harmed and do battle. Venom once again takes the upper hand, but Spider-Man outwits him and lights the abandoned dockhouse on fire. Remember, the symbiote fear flames. Peter tries planting a tracker onto Venom, but the suit quickly destroys it, and Venom tries to drag Peter into the briny deep for a mutual kill. The suit, however, tries to rebond with Peter, but the act ends up knocking all three parties out. Peter wakes and then calls the Fantastic Four to come and take the still unconscious Eddie Brock back to prison as he walks away into the sunrise. Venom would, however, not be contained, and he breaks out again in the pages of Quasar before returning in a 4-part storyline involving himself, Spider-Man, the Punisher, Black Cat, and a villain named Styx. Though to save time, most of the Spider-Man and Venom meet is in the last few issues. The plot involves villains Styx, a character who can kill with a touch, and Stone, a mercenary with some guns and the ability to decay inorganic matter, working for Mary Jane's ex-landlord to kill Spider-Man for knowing too much about his illegal operations. They, however, make one big mistake. Only Venom is allowed to kill Spider-Man. The whole plot is basically an all-out smackdown brawl between the villains, but it ends with Styx and Stone defeated, but not before Styx seemingly kills Venom's suit. Powerless, Eddie Brock is taken away to maximum security prison, Rikers Island. And that was the end of Venom. Or was it? In Spider-Man issues 344 and 345, we would see Eddie Brock again in prison with his new cellmate, serial killer and David Hasselhoff impersonator, Cletus Cassidy. We will come back to him shortly because what's important now is the symbiote survived and found its way back to its home, Eddie Brock, who makes his escape while leaving a little sum behind for later. Isn't foreshadowing fun? Venom once again finds Spider-Man and the two do battle in issues 346 and 347, this time with the fight ending on a tropical Caribbean island and Spider-Man faking his own death so Venom can leave him the hell alone. I mean, crazier plans have worked. So that was probably that.
When I get out of here, and I will, there's gonna be carnage.
Alright, him. Drop in, folks, we're reaching the climax. This is the storyline that made Venom what he is today. Enter Carnage. To keep things relatively brief, I won't discuss Cletus Cassidy's Carnage, mainly because he's so good of a character he can get a video of his own, and he will, that's part 2. But remember when I said the symbiote left some behind? Yeah, it turns out symbiotes reproduce by budding.
Can you reproduce by budding? Can ya?
So the Venom symbiote was not only able to revive itself from the dead, it was also apparently pregnant and left behind its baby in the cell with Cletus Cassidy. This symbiote, a red one, bonds itself internally rather than externally and would form together with Cletus into the serial killer symbiote villain Carnage. And with his newfound power, what does he do? Well, only what every deranged mass-murdering psychopath would do, like Prototype the home game. And I bring this up because whereas Venom is basically Dark Spider-Man, this new symbiote gives Carnage a power set quite similar to Alex Mercer. Blades in particular are a favorite of his. This murder spree catches the attention of Peter Parker, who first suspects that Venom is back, but then remembers Venom has a very distinct code to only go after him. So he goes to do his research. He discovers who might really be behind the spree of killings and confronts him, tracking him down to an abandoned orphanage. However, Carnage was no mere Venom. and he very easily ragdolls the experienced Peter and even injures a few cops. He then makes his escape and then murders an entire family, including 3 young children, leaving Peter no choice but to enlist the aid of Venom. In the next issue, 361, he and Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, return to the island where Venom had been left. When Venom realizes he has been duped, he battles the 2 superheroes, and we discover that he's been training and is immune to his old weaknesses of fire and sonic blasts. Well, at least a smaller sonic blast. A large one will still subdue him. When they manage to subdue him and explain the situation to him, Venom is ready to return. He agrees to help stop the mass murderer in exchange for his freedom and immunity. It's a deal that Peter reluctantly has no choice but to accept, as he cannot stop Carnage by himself. The 2 return and confront Carnage, but even with their combined power, it's not enough, as Carnage murders a young mother and throws her infant out of a skyrise. Eddie and Peter leap to save the poor infant, but Carnage uses that as an opportunity to escape. In issue 363, Carnage reveals his next victim, J. Jonah Jameson. Because Jameson uses his press to portray himself as a herald of law and order, Carnage chose to show his belief that law and order are subjectively empty and meaningless concepts, basically revealing that he's a leftist. How shocking. While on their way there, Peter suggests they call the Avengers, but Venom scoffs it off as this is their problem to deal with. They arrive just in time to keep Carnage from striking a killing blow, but he manages to kidnap Jameson and get away. Robbie Robertson, the Daily Bugle's second-in-command, prepares for the worst as Spider-Man and Venom rush to pursue the crazed serial killer. They manage to find him at a heavy metal concert and on stage manage to fight him using electricity. When that doesn't work, Spider-Man uses one of the concert speakers while Venom holds Carnage in place, insisting that he'd be able to take the hit. So I'm very familiar about this scenario.
No! If that hit were finished! Hey, Kakarot! Look, if you don't let me go, right now, we're both going to die! What's wrong? You seem a little scared, brother. You're saying, don't sacrifice yourself for these Earth Dogs! It's nice to know that you're so worried about me, Prepare yourself, Goku! It's time! Special beam cannon! Fire! Kakarot!
Anyway, the blast is enough to completely incapacitate Carnage and the day is saved. But Venom, still being Venom, tries to attack Peter and is thankfully stopped by the Fantastic Four, who haul the symbiote villains away as J. Jonah Jameson blames Spider-Man for literally everything. Classic Jonah. The following few arcs I'll skim over for the sake of brevity. There was a few appearances by Venom in the storylines First Kill, The Trial of Venom, and Spirits of Venom, as well as back-page storylines where Eddie Brock Venom would save the lives of Richard and Mary Parker, leading to issue 375 where Peter speaks with figures from Eddie's past. Venom confronts him after this, but realizes those in glass houses can't throw stones. The two agree from then on they'd leave each other and their relatives and loved ones alone and make peace. This would lead to Eddie leaving for the Pacific Coast to start his own solo series, Venom Lethal Protector, which is the last comic material I intend to cover. Now, to keep things brief, the main plot of Lethal Protector revolves around Venom acting in his shift from villain to anti-hero as he's confronted by the Life Foundation, who found ways to make new symbiotes using him as a sample and made symbiote villains to use as weapons. These symbiotes are Scream, Lasher, Riot, Phage, and Agony, and it is up to Venom to put a stop to the evil corporation's plan to make symbiote super weapons. It's a brilliant solo series, and I believe the best Venom solo storyline ever told. If you can find it in trade or collections, be sure to check it out. So before closing with my own personal feelings on the matter, I want to be brief and talk about some of the alternate media appearances of Venom. Aside from the two beat-em-up games based on Maximum Carnage and Separation Anxiety, which I intend to cover in part 2, Venom also appeared as a playable fighter in Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where he used his Lethal Protector anti-heroic personality. His moveset's a ton of fun with a flurry of fists and fangs, and he's one of my mains in those games. Another great appearance was in the 90s cartoon. While it did add a few elements to the Venom backstory that weren't there before, specifically the hormonal imbalance thing, which led to this scene.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
It also did a fairly good job of portraying the Venom storyline and really made him one of the best characters in the show. Also from the 90s was the PS1 Spider-Man title, in which Venom was a boss turned ally against the final villains of Carnage and Dr. Octopus.
Where'd Spider-Wuss go? Spider-Wuss! Come out and play!
It was also playable in Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but only as DLC for the Xbox 360 version, which is a shame. And in Ultimate Alliance 2, you only get proper Venom as a skin, with Mac Gargan being the playable version in the campaign. Yeah, there's a good reason I ain't talking about that version of Venom, thank you very much. They at least made up for it in the third game, where Venom, Eddie Brock, is playable in the story. Venom also is slated to appear in the upcoming Spider-Man 2 Insomniac game, but details have yet to come out about to what capacity. Venom is also intended to appear in Midnight Suns as some that's been turned into demon, much like the Hulk. Finally is the Venom movie. Again for brevity, because I could do a review of this movie on its own and its sequel, all I'll say it's a wonderful experience and an adaptation of Lethal Protector's Life Foundation storyline that should have been rated R. This is about integrity, not mass viewability. Just because more people can see some doesn't make it better. Oh, and as for Venom in Spider-Man 3 Sam Raimi, I have no idea what you're talking about. Raimi was clearly trying to make a Hobgoblin storyline, and the alien suit was only there for a setup for a sequel. It's almost like if you rush the guy and put fan demands into his lap, he's gonna revolt. All in all, Venom is one of the all-time greats of Marvel, and one of my favorite comic book characters overall. Up there with Black Adam and Green Lantern. It's a shame, though, that Marvel editorial seems to have this hatred of him, where they're constantly making unnecessary changes and deaths to the character just to get people away. Sort of like what they do to Wolverine and Spider-Man's marriage. There has been some hope recently, with not long ago there being a really decent solo series ongoing for Venom, but once again Marvel editorial sabotaged it by changing its main writer, and it started to go down the drain. Same with Wolverine, same with the X-Men, same for any hopes of reviving Spider-Man's marriage. Leave it to Marvel to continuously snatch failure from the talents of success. Anyway, this video has gone on quite long enough. Expect a part 2 focused on Carnage to come maybe sometime in spring or summer of 2023. Anyway, this has been the Koopa Man. Game on.
You come in here again. In fact, you go anywhere in the city preying on innocent people, and we will find you and eat both your arms and then both of your legs, and then we will eat your face right off your head. Do you understand? Please. Yes. So you will be this armless, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind. Do you feel me?
What the hell are you?
We are Venom. On second